Hunter vanished. Years later, his truck found with shocking discovery inside. The cold morning air hung heavy over the forgotten gravel road near the Blackwater River. A group of teenagers, wandering through the overgrown backroads, stumbled upon a relic from the past, a battered pickup truck, half swallowed by the wild. Its rusted frame and cracked windows told a story of years lost to time. But it was what lay inside that would shake the quiet town of Hollis Ridge to its core. What investigators found inside would change everything the community thought they knew about a disappearance that had haunted them for nearly a decade. The truck, once belonging to Terry Brookins, a man who vanished without a trace in 2010, held secrets wrapped in layers of mystery and silence. What would you do if you came across an abandoned vehicle deep in the woods, filled with items that could finally answer questions left unanswered for years? Have you ever paused to consider the hidden stories that might be lying just beneath the surface of your own neighborhood? Inside that truck, wrapped carefully in weathered newspaper, were objects that didn't belong. An old journal filled with strange notes, a sealed envelope addressed to a name no one recognized, and a set of silver cufflinks that raised more questions than answers. What really happened to Terry Brookins? Why was his truck found with these puzzling items inside? The discovery sent ripples through Hollis Ridge, a town that had long accepted Terry's disappearance as a mystery locked away in the past. For years, his absence was a quiet ache, a question mark hanging over the community's collective memory. Now, with the truck's sudden reappearance, those old wounds were reopened, and new questions demanded answers. The journal's pages hinted at meetings held in secret, strange lights seen flickering over the river, and shadows that didn't belong to the forest. The envelope, sealed tight and untouched by time, suggested a message meant for someone named Clarence, someone connected to a story no one had yet pieced together. And the cufflinks, polished and out of place, belonged to a world far removed from the rugged life Terry led. This wasn't just a case of a man lost to the wilderness. It was a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit, a story that refused to stay buried. Have you ever felt the pull of a mystery that refuses to let go? The kind that makes you question everything you thought you knew about a place, a person, or a moment frozen in time. Stay with us as we explore the strange disappearance of Terry Brookins, the secrets hidden in his abandoned truck, and the search for truth that has gripped a community for over a decade. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Body Crime for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Terry Brookins was more than just a familiar face in Hollis Ridge. He was a man deeply woven into the fabric of the community. Raised among the towering oaks and mesquite trees that define the landscape, Terry developed a profound respect for the land from an early age. His life was shaped by the rhythms of nature, the quiet patience required to track game, the early mornings spent listening to the forest's subtle sounds, and the steady focus that hunting demanded. Known for his calm demeanor and steady hands, Terry was a skilled hunter whose knowledge of the wilderness was unmatched. He moved through the woods with a quiet confidence, reading signs that others overlooked. His friends often said he had a sixth sense for the forest, noticing details that escaped even the most experienced outdoorsman. Terry's connection to nature was more than a hobby. It was a way of life. He believed in living in harmony with the environment, taking only what was needed and leaving the rest untouched. This respect earned him the admiration of many in Hollis Ridge, where hunting was both tradition and necessity. At home, Terry was a devoted husband to Aisha and a loving father to their teenage daughter, Monique. Family was his anchor, and despite the demands of his outdoor pursuits, he always made time for those he cared about. His worn cowboy hat and rugged pickup truck were as much a part of his identity as his quiet strength and unwavering loyalty. Terry's appearance reflected the life he led, weathered skin from years under the sun, hands calloused from hard work, and eyes that held a quiet intensity. His worn cowboy hat, a constant companion, shaded a face marked by both kindness and determination. When he drove his old pickup truck through the winding roads of Hollis Ridge, it was a familiar sight, a symbol of reliability and rugged endurance. The truck itself was more than just a vehicle. It was a trusted partner on countless hunting trips. Its bed carried gear, supplies, and sometimes the fruits of Terry's patient waits in the forest. Though battered and aged, the truck was meticulously maintained, a reflection of Terry's careful nature and respect for his tools. Those who knew Terry well spoke of his sharp observation skills. He had a way of noticing things others missed, a broken branch here, a faint footprint there, that often made the difference between a successful hunt and a day spent wandering. This attentiveness extended beyond the woods. Terry was aware of the subtle shifts in his community, the unspoken tensions and quiet struggles that many preferred to ignore. Despite his reserved nature, Terry was a man of principle and quiet strength. He carried himself with a steady confidence that inspired trust. Whether sharing a story by the fire or lending a hand to a neighbor, he was a steady presence in a world that often felt uncertain. In every sense, Terry Brookins was a man shaped by his environment and his values, a figure whose disappearance left a void not only in his family, but in the heart of Hollis Ridge itself. November 2010 dawned cold and gray over Hollis Ridge. A thick fog clung to the trees and blanketed the winding roads, muffling the usual sounds of morning life. The air was heavy with a stillness that unsettled even the most seasoned residents. It was the kind of silence that made the forest feel vast and unknowable, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Terry Brookins set out before sunrise, his old pickup truck rumbling softly as it disappeared into the mist. His plan was familiar: head deep into Pinevale Forest, a stretch of timberland known for its dense undergrowth and abundant game. The forest was a place Terry knew well, but that morning something felt different. Neighbors later recalled the unusual quiet, the absence of birdsong, and the way the fog seemed to swallow the light. Eyewitnesses along the narrow road remembered seeing Terry's truck headlights cutting through the haze, moving steadily toward the heart of the forest. There was no sign of distress, no indication that anything was amiss. He was a man who respected the wilderness and understood its dangers, so the calmness of his departure offered little cause for alarm. As the day wore on and the sun failed to break through the thick canopy, concern began to grow. Terry did not return home by evening, and his family's worry deepened with each passing hour. Calls to friends and neighbors yielded no clues. No one had seen or heard from him after he entered the forest. The following morning, a search was organized. Family members, friends, and local volunteers combed the edges of Pinevale Forest, calling out Terry's name. The dense underbrush and uneven terrain made the task difficult, and a lingering fog added to the sense of unease. Despite their efforts, no sign of Terry was found. Law enforcement joined the search soon after, expanding the area to include nearby creek beds and abandoned trails. They found a few scattered items: a single glove, a torn piece of camo fabric that hinted at Terry's presence but offered no clear answers. These fragments became the only tangible links to his last known moments. The investigation quickly faced challenges. The forest's vastness and the passage of time worked against the searchers. Without a clear trail or witness to what had happened, the case began to lose momentum. For Terry's family, the lack of answers was a heavy burden, leaving them suspended in a state of painful uncertainty. Neighbors shared stories of the morning, recalling the strange stillness and the way the forest seemed to close in around the roads Terry traveled. Some whispered about the unusual quiet, as if it were a warning, a sign that something beyond the ordinary had taken place. Despite the growing mystery, life in Hollis Ridge moved forward. The search for Terry became a memory, a chapter closed too soon. Yet, beneath the surface, the questions remained, questions that would not be forgotten, waiting for the day when new light might be shed on that foggy November morning. As weeks turned into months, the search for Terry Brookins slowed and eventually stalled. The initial urgency faded, replaced by frustration and unanswered questions. Without new leads or evidence, the investigation grew cold, leaving law enforcement with little to pursue. The forest had kept its secrets, and Terry's fate remained a mystery. For Aisha and Monique, the silence was deafening. Each day without answers deepened their grief, a wound that refused to heal. They clung to hope, but with every passing season, the reality of Terry's absence settled heavier on their hearts. The uncertainty gnawed at them. Was he lost to the wilderness, or was there something more they didn't know? In the community, whispers began to circulate. Some believed Terry had simply gotten lost or met with an accident. Others speculated about darker possibilities, foul play, or that he had stumbled upon something he shouldn't have. These theories, though unproven, kept the story alive in hushed conversations and quiet gatherings. Despite the rumors, public attention waned. The news moved on, and the case slipped from headlines into the background. background. Yet every autumn, as the leaves turned and the air grew crisp, the memory of Terry's disappearance resurfaced. Friends and neighbors would pause to remember the man who had vanished into the fog, honoring his spirit even as the answers remained out of reach. For Aisha and Monique, those autumn remembrances were bittersweet. They gathered with close friends and family, sharing stories of Terry's kindness, his quiet strength, and the life he had built with them. These moments were both a tribute and a reminder of the void left behind, a void filled with questions that had no answers. The community's collective memory of Terry was a mix of respect and sorrow. While many had moved on with their lives, the story of his disappearance lingered in the background, a quiet ache that surfaced when the seasons changed. Some residents held onto their own theories, discussing them in small groups or online forums, trying to make sense of the unknown. Local law enforcement maintained the case file, but without new evidence, the investigation remained dormant. The cold case status meant that Terry's disappearance was officially unresolved, a label that brought little comfort to those who loved him. Yet, the story was far from forgotten. It lived on in the hearts of those who remembered Terry not just as a missing man, but as a husband, father, and friend. The unanswered questions fueled a quiet determination among some to keep his memory alive and to hope for a day when the truth might finally come to light. If you have thoughts or theories about what happened to Terry Brookins, share them in the comments below. Your insight could be part of the conversation that brings new attention to this long-standing mystery. Nearly 10 years after Terry Brookins disappeared, the quiet town of Hollis Ridge was jolted awake by an unexpected discovery. In early 2020, a group of local teenagers exploring the overgrown backroads near the Blackwater River stumbled upon something that had been hidden in plain sight: a rusted pickup truck half buried in the underbrush. The truck was a ghost from the past. Its paint, once a deep shade of green, was now faded and chipped, overtaken by rust and creeping vines. The tires were flat, and the windows were cracked but still mostly intact, allowing a glimpse into the cabin where time seemed to have paused. Nature had claimed much of the exterior, but inside, the scene was strangely preserved, as if the truck had been abandoned only yesterday. Curiosity turned to shock as the teenagers peered inside. Draped across the front seat was a worn thermal blanket, its fabric faded but still recognizable. Beneath it lay a collection of items that seemed out of place after so many years. There was a small leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed but filled with neat, deliberate handwriting. Nearby, a sealed envelope addressed simply to Clarence rested untouched, its paper weathered but intact. Among the personal effects was a faded photograph of a smiling family, Terry's family, recognizable to those who knew the story. Most puzzling of all was a pair of silver cufflinks, polished and gleaming, clearly not belonging to Terry, who was known for his simple, practical style. The discovery sent immediate shockwaves through the community. Authorities were called to the scene, and the truck was carefully transported to a secure location for examination. The items inside were treated as potential evidence, sparking a renewed investigation into a case that had long been considered closed. The local police, joined by a cold case unit, began a meticulous examination of the truck and its contents. Every detail was documented and analyzed. The thermal blanket, though worn, suggested someone had sought warmth or shelter inside the vehicle. The journal quickly became a focal point, its entries hinting at observations that went beyond ordinary hunting notes. Mentions of strange lights over the river, meetings in secluded spots, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. The sealed envelope addressed to Clarence raised more questions than answers. Who was Clarence? What message was meant to be delivered? The envelope's condition suggested it had been carefully preserved, untouched by the elements despite the years spent in the wilderness. The silver cufflinks stood out sharply against the rugged backdrop of the truck's interior. They belonged to a world far removed from Terry's simple lifestyle, hinting at connections or encounters that had never been part of the original investigation. Their presence suggested that Terry might have crossed paths with people or situations that were previously unknown. The faded family photograph, tucked carefully among the items, was a poignant reminder of the man behind the mystery. It showed Terry with Aisha and Monique, smiling and full of life, a stark contrast to the cold, abandoned truck that now held their memories. News of the discovery spread quickly, reigniting interest and hope within the community. For many, it was a sign that the story was far from over. Authorities promised a thorough investigation, and the public awaited answers that had long been denied. The discovery of Terry's truck and its contents reopened wounds, but also offered a chance to finally confront the questions that had lingered for years. It was a moment that shifted the course of the case, turning a cold file into a living mystery once again. The discovery of Terry Brookins' truck in 2020 sparked a renewed commitment from law enforcement to revisit the case with fresh eyes and modern tools. A specialized cold case unit was formed, bringing together experienced investigators, forensic experts, and analysts equipped with technology that had not been available a decade earlier. The truck and its contents were transported to a forensic laboratory, where every item was subjected to detailed examination. Advanced techniques were used to analyze fingerprints, DNA traces, and the materials themselves. The thermal blanket was tested for fibers and possible biological evidence, while the envelope and journal were scrutinized under ultraviolet light to reveal hidden markings or notes. The journal entries quickly drew attention. Written in Terry's careful handwriting, they described a series of clandestine meetings held in remote locations near the Blackwater River. Terry noted the presence of unfamiliar vehicles and individuals who seemed to be watching him during his hunting trips. One entry mentioned warning lights dancing over the water and voices exchanged in hushed tones, details that suggested Terry had stumbled upon activities far beyond his usual outdoor pursuits. Investigators also revisited cell tower data from the time of Terry's disappearance. The record showed his phone pinging near a remote boathouse along the river, a location previously overlooked. Witnesses came forward with new statements, recalling vague silhouettes and muffled conversations in the area on the night Terry vanished. These revelations led to a growing theory. Terry had inadvertently witnessed something he was not meant to see. The presence of the silver cufflinks and the sealed envelope addressed to Clarence hinted at connections to individuals involved in secretive dealings, possibly linked to the boathouse activities. The identity of Clarence became a key focus. Investigators explored local records and social circles, searching for anyone who matched the name or had ties to the mysterious meetings. Clarence's role remained unclear. Was he a messenger, a participant, or someone Terry trusted enough to send a message to? As the investigation deepened, forensic experts uncovered traces of soil and plant fibers on the envelope, suggesting it had been handled outdoors shortly before being placed in the truck. This detail supported the idea that Terry had been actively involved in passing along information, possibly trying to expose what he had witnessed. The cold case unit expanded their search to include interviews with individuals connected to the boathouse and the surrounding area. Some recalled unusual nighttime activity, boats arriving and departing under cover of darkness, figures moving stealthily along the riverbank. These accounts, once dismissed as local gossip, now took on new significance. The silver cufflinks, analyzed for DNA and fingerprints, pointed to a man known in the community but rarely discussed openly. This individual was linked to both legitimate business ventures and shadowy dealings, blurring the lines between respectability and secrecy. Investigators considered the possibility that Terry's disappearance was tied to this man's influence and the covert operations near the river. Despite the mounting evidence, the investigation faced obstacles. Some witnesses were reluctant to speak, and others had faded memories after so many years. The community's mixed feelings, hope for answers tempered by fear of stirring old conflicts, added complexity to the case. Still, the cold case unit pressed on, piecing together a timeline that placed Terry at the center of a web of hidden meetings and suspicious activity. The journal's cryptic notes, combined with the physical evidence, painted a picture of a man caught between his love for the wilderness and the dangerous secrets it concealed. The renewed investigation transformed the narrative from a simple disappearance to a story of possible betrayal, secrecy, and the search for justice. Terry Brookins was no longer just a missing hunter. He was a witness to something that demanded answers, and the community was watching closely as those answers began to emerge. The reopening of Terry Brookins' case stirred a complex mix of emotions throughout Hollis Ridge. For some, it was a chance to finally seek justice and answers long overdue. For others, it meant reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. The community found itself divided between hope and hesitation, caught between the desire for truth and the fear of confronting painful memories. 4 Aisha and Monique, the discovery of the truck and the renewed investigation brought a fresh wave of grief. Years of uncertainty had weighed heavily on them, but now there was a glimmer of hope that the silence might be broken. Their pain was raw, but so was their determination to see the case through, to find closure for themselves and for Terry's memory. Among those championing the cause was Darnell Carter, a retired detective who had worked on the original investigation. Known for his unwavering commitment to justice, Darnell became a vocal advocate for reopening the case with full transparency. He urged the community and authorities alike to confront the shortcomings of the past and to support the efforts to bring clarity to Terry's disappearance. Public forums were held, drawing residents eager to voice their concerns and demand accountability. These gatherings became a platform for honest conversations about the investigation's early failures and the need for a thorough, unbiased review. Calls for transparency echoed through the town, reflecting a growing impatience with unanswered questions. Media coverage soon followed, shining a spotlight on the case and the broader issues it raised. Journalists examined the original investigation, highlighting potential oversights and systemic challenges that may have contributed to the case going cold. The renewed attention brought pressure on local officials to act decisively and to ensure that the investigation was handled with the seriousness it deserved. In response, a multi-agency task force was established, combining resources from local, state, and federal law enforcement. This collaboration aimed to bring new expertise and technology to the case, signaling a commitment to uncovering the truth no matter how complex the path. The task force's formation was met with cautious optimism. For many in Hollis Ridge, it represented a chance to finally address the questions that had lingered for years. It also underscored the importance of community involvement and vigilance in seeking justice. Aisha and Monique found strength in the growing support around them. Their journey through grief was now intertwined with a collective effort to honor Terry's memory and to hold those responsible accountable. The community's renewed focus on the case was a reminder that some stories refuse to be forgotten. If this story resonates with you, please share it to help raise awareness about cold cases like Terry's. Together, we can keep the search for justice alive and ensure that no disappearance is left unanswered. As the investigation progressed, several theories emerged to explain Terry Brookins' disappearance, each carrying its own weight and implications. The simplest possibility was that Terry had suffered an accident, lost in the vast Pinevale forest, overwhelmed by the elements, or caught in a fatal mishap. After all, the wilderness was unforgiving, and even the most experienced outdoorsman could fall victim to its dangers. However, the discovery of the truck and its contents complicated this view. The presence of the silver cufflinks, items clearly not belonging to Terry, suggested interactions beyond his usual circle. These cufflinks pointed toward a man known in the community, someone with ties to both legitimate business and less transparent dealings. This raised the possibility that Terry had encountered individuals involved in activities he was not meant to witness. The mysterious Clarence, named on the sealed envelope found in the truck, became a focal point of speculation. Was Clarence a confidant, a messenger, or a figure connected to the covert operations hinted at in Terry's journal? The journal's cryptic entries described warning lights flickering over the Blackwater River and secret meetings held under the cover of darkness. These notes suggested that Terry had stumbled upon illegal activities, perhaps smuggling or trafficking, taking place deep within the forest. Forensic analysis of the envelope revealed traces of soil and plant matter, indicating it had been handled outdoors shortly before being placed in the truck. This detail supported the idea that Terry was actively involved in gathering or passing along information, possibly trying to expose what he had seen. Despite these leads, the investigation faced resistance. Some local figures, influential in the community, expressed discomfort with the renewed scrutiny. Their reluctance to cooperate fueled suspicions that the case touched on a larger scandal, one that involved powerful interests and long-standing secrets. As the investigation progressed, several theories emerged to explain Terry Brookins' disappearance, each carrying its own weight and implications. The simplest possibility was that Terry had suffered an accident, lost in the vast Pinevale forest, overwhelmed by the elements, or caught in a fatal mishap. After all, the wilderness was unforgiving, and even the most experienced outdoorsman could fall victim to its dangers. However, the discovery of the truck and its contents complicated this view. The presence of the silver cufflinks, items clearly not belonging to Terry, suggested interactions beyond his usual circle. These cufflinks pointed toward a man known in the community, someone with ties to both legitimate business and less transparent dealings. This raised the possibility that Terry had encountered individuals involved in activities he was not meant to witness. The mysterious Clarence, named on the sealed envelope found in the truck, became a focal point of speculation. Was Clarence a confidant, a messenger, or a figure connected to the covert operations hinted at in Terry's journal? The journal's cryptic entries described warning lights flickering over the Blackwater River and secret meetings held under the cover of darkness. These notes suggested that Terry had stumbled upon illegal activities, perhaps smuggling or trafficking, taking place deep within the forest. Forensic analysis of the envelope revealed traces of soil and plant matter, indicating it had been handled outdoors shortly before being placed in the truck. This detail supported the idea that Terry was actively involved in gathering or passing along information, possibly trying to expose what he had seen. Despite these leads, the investigation faced resistance. Some local figures, influential in the community, expressed discomfort with the renewed scrutiny. Their reluctance to cooperate fueled suspicions that the case touched on a larger scandal, one that involved powerful interests and long-standing secrets. The case of Terry Brookins remains partially unresolved, a puzzle with pieces that have yet to fully come together. While the discovery of his truck and the renewed investigation have shed light on new leads and raised important questions, the full truth behind his disappearance continues to elude those seeking answers. The mystery lingers, a reminder that some stories resist easy conclusions. Terry's story continues to resonate deeply within Hollis Ridge. His absence is felt not only by his family, but by a community that has carried the weight of uncertainty for over a decade. The renewed attention has sparked conversations about justice, accountability, and the importance of never letting a case fade into silence. It has reminded the town that persistence in seeking truth is vital, even when the path is difficult and the answers are not clear. Beyond the investigation, Terry's legacy endures as a symbol of resilience and hope. He is remembered as a devoted husband and father, a man who loved his family and the land he called home. His story is a testament to the enduring impact one life can have, even when that life is cut short under mysterious circumstances. The lessons from Terry's disappearance extend beyond Hollis Ridge. They speak to the broader challenges faced by communities grappling with unresolved cases and the need for vigilance, compassion, and determination in the pursuit of justice. His story encourages us to keep asking questions, to listen carefully, and to hold onto the belief that truth, no matter how deeply buried, can eventually come to light. If you've been moved by Terry Brookins' story, subscribe to Mr. Body Crime for more true crime stories that challenge our understanding of justice and truth. Together, we can honor those who have been lost and continue the search for answers.